Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Hockey Talk with TG podcast. I'm Ty Glenn. Hope you guys are having a great Monday. Got lots of NHL news to discuss, so make sure that you stay tuned in to the end of this episode. If you are new to the podcast, first time listening, whatnot, make sure you hit that like, subscribe button. If you are watching the podcast on YouTube, if you are listening to the podcast on these audio platforms, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, or any other audio platform like that, make sure to follow the Hockey Talk with TG podcast on there as well. We're with you guys every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 11:30 a.m. to noon Central Time, 12:30 p.m. to 1 p.m. Each time. So make sure that you smash that subscribe button if you're watching on YouTube. If you're listening on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or iHeartRadio, make sure to hit that follow button, hit that notification bell so you don't miss an episode of the Hockey Talk with TG podcast. And also, next Tuesday is the start of the 2025-26 NHL season. So we're 1 week away from the NHL regular season, and the Hockey Talk with TG podcast is the place to be to get all your latest hockey news and in-depth analysis from teams, players, stats, and so much more on the Hockey Talk with TG podcast. I mean, this preseason has gone by just that fast, just quick, and I still can't believe we are just 1 week away from the NHL regular season. NHL 2025-26 season. We are 1 week away. Regular season starts next Tuesday. 3 games on the slate, but I'll talk about that on either Monday's episode, next Monday's episode, or this coming Friday's episode of the Hockey Talk with TG podcast. So make sure that you stay tuned in for that. Prospects video is coming out soon. It's going to come out sometime this week, because I know I said it a bunch of times on the Hockey Talk with TG podcast, but it's going to be coming out sometime this week before the regular season starts next Tuesday. That's going to be coming out on the TG Hockey channel, so make sure that you subscribe to there as well, along with the Hockey Talk with TG podcast. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get into the NHL news for today. We'll start things off by talking about Marc-Andre Fleury's preseason game with the Columbus Blue Jackets. So he plays his, maybe you want to call it, final game of the NHL with the Pittsburgh Penguins, and the Penguins 4-1 win over the Columbus Blue Jackets Saturday this past weekend. He came in the third period and he stopped all 8 shots faced in the third period, including a dangerous 2-on-1 for the Blue Jackets that he read perfectly, in a screen heavy point shot that he made a save on with his blocker. And the Penguins fans, they were loud, they were on their feet, and they chanted Marc-Andre Fleury's name. And to those wondering, why didn't he start in the first and second period? Why didn't he start the whole entire game? The plan was for him to start in the third period. They weren't going to put him in the whole entire game. They were only just going to put him in the third period just to play his final 20 minutes of hockey, and that's what he did. So this was an emotional game for sure. But let's not forget, just a reminder, because I know people are going to be thinking, ooh, Marc-Andre Fleury is back on the Pittsburgh Penguins. Let's go. This is bringing back nostalgia. This is bringing back the 2010s vibes. Nostalgia for the Pittsburgh Penguins. Yes, that is true. But let's not forget that this was a PTO contract, a professional tryout contract for Marc-Andre Fleury. So we won't be seeing him back in the NHL for this upcoming season and the other seasons before that. He has played technically his last game in the NHL. He wanted to close it out with his old club, his old squad, the Pittsburgh Penguins. So he temporarily played this preseason game for this one preseason game. He technically played. He's not going to be playing with the Pittsburgh Penguins throughout the season. This is just for this one game and one game only. He retired after the 2024-25 season, but he wanted to close things out for good and just, play with the Pittsburgh Penguins. Both sides agreed to this deal, and what a preseason game that was. To me, that felt like a playoff game or a regular, season game because of how loud the fans were on their feet for the flower, and yeah, it just brought back so much nostalgia, and that was a great third period from Marc-Andre Fleury, not letting in a goal. Every save that he made, the Penguins fans were on their feet for that. He is a Pittsburgh icon. He played 13 seasons with the Pittsburgh Penguins before the Golden Knights picked him up in the expansion draft that happened in 2017, and I remember that very well. I was in middle school when the Golden Knights were or just becoming a team in the NHL. But for Marc-Andre Fleury, he played 13 seasons with the Pittsburgh Penguins. In those 13 seasons, he had a .375, .216, and .68 record with a 2.58 goals against average and a .912 save percentage and 44 shutouts in 691 games played. 536 of those games he has started. And in the playoffs, he was 62 and 51 with a 2.65 goals against average and a .908 save percentage and 10 shutouts in 115 playoff games. 107 of those playoff games he has started, and he's won 3 Stanley Cups, one in 2009. I won't forget that last second save that he made. I don't know if that was on Nicholas Carnwall or whatnot, but he made a last-minute save, and then the horn sounded, and the Pittsburgh Penguins won 2009 Stanley Cup. Never will forget that save. And then he also won the back-to-back Stanley Cups in 2016 and 2017 with the Pittsburgh Penguins. He was the starting goalie in the 2009 Cup run, and then he was a key contributor in the 2016 and 2017 Cup runs. And specifically for the Pittsburgh Penguins franchise, he has the most wins by Pittsburgh Penguins goalie with 375. Most games played by goalie was 691. Second in shutouts behind Tom Barrasso. And the most playoff wins in Penguins history was 62. Overall, in his NHL career, he had 575 wins. I forget the other stats, but he is second in NHL history with 575 wins behind Martin Brodeur, which I'm pretty sure he's one of the goalies that Marc-Andre Fleury grew up watching besides Patrick Roy, because both of those goalies, Martin Brodeur and Patrick Roy, both Quebec goalies, and Marc-Andre Fleury is from Montreal, Quebec. He grew up a Habs fan, and he grew up watching Patrick Roy, and I'm pretty sure Martin Brodeur, pretty sure he watched a couple of New Jersey Devils games watching Martin Brodeur on the New Jersey Devils. But for the game overall, though, Sidney Crosby, Chris Letang, some of Marc-Andre Fleury's former teammates, they notched points in the win. Sidney Crosby had a goal and 2 assists for a 3.9. He had a goal 5 minutes and 20 seconds in the second period. And Chris Letang also had a point in this game. He only had 1 assist in this game. Unfortunately, Evgeny Malkin did not contribute a point in this game. It would have been cool to see, but nonetheless, the Pittsburgh Penguins get the win over the Columbus Blue Jackets last Saturday, or this past Saturday, if you will. Unfortunately, we will not be seeing any more of Marc-Andre Fleury in the NHL. And we're all going to miss Marc-Andre Fleury. And as a Blackhawks fan, because he did play for the Chicago Blackhawks as one of the 4 teams, as a Blackhawks fan, it was very nice to see Marc-Andre Fleury back in the Steel City, playing with his old squad, the Pittsburgh Penguins. It was an emotional game for me because, like I say, even though he played for the Blackhawks for a short amount of time, I really enjoyed watching Marc-Andre Fleury in that game and throughout his whole entire career. Made some key memorial saves that I'll always remember. I already mentioned the 2009 last second save. There was another save I will always remember by Marc-Andre Fleury. This is when he was on the VGK Vegas Golden Knights, and he made a turnaround save on the Toronto Maple Leafs. I don't know which Maple Leafs player it was. This highlight is on YouTube, but it felt like one of the Maple Leafs players was about to score a goal. Marc-Andre Fleury turned around and said, "Not so fast." He made a glove save on that. This clip is on YouTube for those who don't know what I'm talking about. I don't know which Maple Leafs player this is on. This was a save against the Maple Leafs. He was on the Golden Knights. And one of the Maple Leafs players, I think, was at the side of the net. Looked like he was about to score. Marc-Andre Fleury jumped back and made a huge save. That's one of my favorite saves by Marc-Andre Fleury. And he was always a guy that always liked to pull pranks, particularly on Sidney Crosby. So he was always a prankster in the locker room, and just overall a nice, great guy to be around. And he was also known for hugging his post or for thanking his post. He always did that throughout his career. Always tapped on the post, so whenever a player would shoot the puck and the puck hits the post, stays out of net, Marc-Andre Fleury will always tap his post saying, "Thank you, Mr. Post." So he always did that throughout his career. He was a funny guy to be around, a great guy to be around, a humble guy to be around. And we're all going to miss Marc-Andre Fleury. No doubt in mind, he will be a Hockey Hall of Famer. He has a Hall of Famer resume, and he's going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer in the next, 2-3 years. Because I think a player has to be retired after 3 seasons to be inducted into the Hockey Hall of Fame. I think that's what I read, so that's why I said that. But for the Pittsburgh Penguins, they will face the Buffalo Sabres on the road Wednesday at 6 o'clock p.m. Central Time. The Blue Jackets will head home to face the Capitals Tuesday at 6 o'clock p.m. Central Time. And now let's talk about the Chicago Blackhawks weekend preseason wins. And boy, oh boy, were they tremendous wins. I'm not just saying it as a Blackhawks fan, but I'm just saying it overall. Look, these were great wins for the Chicago Blackhawks. Saturday, September 27th, they had a 4-2 win over our rivals and Central Division foes, the St. Louis Blues. A 4-2 win over the St. Louis Blues for the Chicago Blackhawks. A comeback win for Chicago as well. They were down 2-0 to winning 4-2. And they had a big third period. The third period that they had in that game really set the tone and really was the bigger impact for this win. Oliver Moore with the game-winning goal for the Blackhawks. A goal that he scored off screen. So to those who didn't watch the preseason game was on Chicago Sports Network and ESPN+. To those who didn't watch the game, in the third period, the Blackhawks and Blues had a scrum. Meanwhile, you got Oliver Moore that's skating on the left side of the ice, skating on like maybe a breakaway, if you will, maybe a slight little breakaway, mid-breakaway, if you will. You got the Blackhawks and Blues in a scrum. You got Oliver Moore skating up the left side of the ice, scores on the Blues goaltender, and that's the game-winning goal. They ended up reviewing this goal to see if it counted and to see if the referee blew the whistle. And the referee did not blow the whistle, so the goal ended up counting. And a lot of Blues fans were upset about that. But that was the game-winning goal. He scored off screen. And I watched this game too because, as you guys know, I am a Blackhawks fan. I watched this game too. I saw the scrum between the Blackhawks and the Blues. And then Rick Ball and Darren Payne says that Oliver Moore has scored, which obviously we don't see because that goal was off screen. So eventually we see a replay of that. But that was one of the most weirdest and oddest moments I ever watched. In all my years of watching hockey, we have never ever seen a goal being scored off screen. And this is the first time, at least for me, that's happened. So that was just a crazy goal. The goal ended up counting. I was so happy that it counted because I didn't know if the referees had blew the whistle or not, or if the goal was going to count, but it ended up counting. So that was good to see as a Blackhawks fan. And I'm pretty sure a lot of Hawks fans were shocked that the goal ended up counting, and they were even confused if Oliver Moore had scored because they didn't show him breaking up the left side of the ice and then scoring the goal. They only just showed the scrum and the fight between the other Blackhawks and Blues players that were on the ice. But yeah, crazy goal right there. Dominic Tornado had a heck of a game for Chicago as well, getting 1 goal and 1 assist for a 2-point night. Gavin Hayes and Jason Dickinson also scored for Chicago. Of course, Gavin Hayes' goal ended up tying the game at 2 in the third period. This just comes 27 seconds after the Hawks cut the lead to 1, and then Jason Dickinson's goal was the empty netter to seal the deal. Spencer Knight made 31 saves on 33 shots faced in net. And for the St. Louis Blues, Dalibor Dvorsky and Brayden Schenn scored for St. Louis. Jordan Binnington stopped all 16 shots faced in the game for the Blues. He was only playing in the first and second period. And then Will Cranley came in the third period, and he made 6 saves on 9 shots faced in net. But I hate to say this as a Blackhawks fan, you could kind of probably say if Jordan Binnington probably would have played that third period, it would have been a 50% chance that the Blackhawks maybe could have won that game or maybe lost that game because Jordan Binnington was lights out in the first 2 frames. Then you put in your backup prospect goaltender in Will Cranley, and the Blackhawks took advantage of that. They got locked in for the third period, and they came back with a comeback win. That's all I'm saying. But I'm glad we got the win regardless, though. But I'm just saying, had Jordan Binnington played in the third period, it would have been a 50-50 chance that we would have got that win or not. So I'm just saying. But I'm happy we got the win regardless. But then you move on to Sunday's game. For the Blackhawks taking on another Central Division foe in the Minnesota Wild. Frank Nazar had a heck of a game, getting a hat trick in the Blackhawks 4-1 win over the Minnesota Wild. He had a goal in the first period, a goal in the second period, and a goal in the third period. He even did the 6-7 celly, which, to be honest, I still don't get that meaning at all. I don't get the 6-7 meaning. I don't get that at all. But yeah, he did the 6-7 celly in that one. And then his second period goal I thought was a good goal. Just skating up with speed, the right-hand side of the ice, and then scoring past Phil Augustin. And then he had an empty netter in the third period to seal the deal. And Ryan Donato scored the other goal for the Blackhawks, and that was a great assist from Connor Bedard, doing a little Patrick Kane spinorama pass to Ryan Donato. It is kind of similar to the Patrick Kane spinorama pass to Marian Hossa back in 2011 against, I believe this was either against Anaheim or Vancouver. Out of Anaheim and Vancouver, that Patrick Kane did that spinorama pass to Marian Hossa back in 2011. Similar play to that with Bedard to Donato and then Kane to Hossa. Similar play to that. The BR Open Ice posted the 2 clips side by side on their Twitter page, so you can take a look at that. I will put that link in the description for you to see. And Drew Commesso made 28 saves and 29 shots faced the net. And despite the Blackhawks being outshot 29-21, I felt like they were in control most of this game. Not just from the scoreboard, but from the game overall. So even though they were outshot 29-21, it felt like maybe some fans felt like they were, kind of outplayed. I felt like, for me, they were in control most of the game, both offensively and defensively. But for the Minnesota Wild, Hunter Hates, I don't know how you pronounce that last name, scored the long goal for the Wild, while Philip Gustafson made 17 saves on 20 shots faced the net. And this was the final road game of the preseason for the Chicago Blackhawks. They'll be back at home Tuesday against one of their arch rivals in the Detroit Red Wings at 7 o'clock p.m. Central Time. I kind of do miss the Red Wings playing in the Western Conference. They're now playing the Eastern Conference, so I don't really hate them as much as I did when they were playing in the Western Conference. Especially now that they got Patrick Kane and Alistair Brinkman on the teams. I don't hate Detroit as much as I did. I still consider them our rivals, though, because they were in the Western Conference and Blackhawks and Red Wings are both original 6 teams, and they have a long history of their rivalry, so I would still consider them their rivals, but I don't hate them as much as I hate the Blues, though. So, just throwing that out there. And I'm just saying that I hate the team, not the fans, because I do have one friend of mine that's a Red Wings fan, and I have at least 2 friends or associates that are St. Louis Blues fans. So, I don't hate the team. I mean, I do hate the team. I don't hate the fans. I hate the team. So, that's all I'm saying. Because, again, I have, a few friends of mine, 1-2 friends of mine that are Red Wings fans and Blues fans. So, yeah. But for the Wild, they will face the Jets at home on Tuesday at 7 o'clock p.m. Central Time. So that'll be a Central Division showdown right there to watch for the Minnesota Wild. And then we got an injury update on Aleksander Barkov. So we did talk about his injury on Friday's episode of last week of the Hockey Talk with TG podcast. We got another injury update from Florida Panthers captain Aleksander Barkov. So after undergoing surgery, he will be out 7 to 9 months after undergoing surgery on his ACL and MCL in his right knee last Friday. And Aleksander Barkov could most likely miss the entire regular season for the Florida Panthers. And that will also mean that he'll miss participating in the 2026 NHL Olympics in Milan, Italy, with his home country in Finland. He was helped off the ice by the trainers at training camp, still favoring that limb in his leg. And like I said on last Friday's episode of Hockey Talk with TG podcast, this incident occurred during, I guess, in the team session where many players were expected to participate. So this was a full team session that I guess players were trying to participate in. And he had, I guess, had a fall on his right knee. He fell kind of awkwardly on his right knee, and he was helped off the ice, and he's going to be out for most likely the regular season. So he won't even get a chance to play at all this season. And this also hurts the Panthers' chances at three-peating because they already have Matthew Tkachuk being out with an injury. He's probably going to be out until maybe December or January. And then Tomas Nosek is also out with an injury. And Barkov and Tkachuk, in my opinion, that's the heart and soul of the Florida Panthers. They're the most dominant forwards in the league and on the Florida Panthers. So that really hurts the Panthers' chances at three-peating. And despite that, I still think the Florida Panthers still have a great offensive line, but with Tkachuk and Barkov, that just makes it 10 times better. But take a look at their offensive lines for the 2025-26 NHL season according to Daily Faceoff. The first line, you got Carter Verhaeghe, Sam Bennett, and Sam Reinhart. You usually have Barkov playing first line center, but because he's going to be out for most likely the entire regular season, that is not the case for this first game of the season. Second line, you got Eetu Luostarinen, Anton Lundell, and Brad Marchand. I think Matthew Tkachuk will usually plays either first or second line. He's usually in the top six. Third line, you got Jesper Boquist, Evan Rodriguez, and Matthew Samoskevich. And fourth line, you got Jonah Gadjevich, Luke Cunnin, and AJ Greer. So the Panthers still have some pieces to their offensive depth in Sam Bennett, Carter Verhaeghe, Sam Reinhart, Brad Marchand, and then on defense you got Aaron Ekblad, Seth Jones. So they still got the pieces to still go on a playoff run, but the injuries to Aleksander Barkov and Matthew Tkachuk is definitely going to hurt them. Their record probably won't be as similar to last season and the season before that when they went on to win back-to-back Stanley Cups. It probably might be lesser than that, but I can still see the Panthers as a playoff team. I actually had them before these injuries started. I had the Panthers finishing first in the Atlantic Division. Now, because of these injuries, I could probably see them finishing maybe third in the Atlantic Division. I had them first originally, though, but because of the injuries to Barkov and Tkachuk, I'm going to say maybe finishing third in the Atlantic Division, if not second. If not second, then third. But yeah, if you're a Florida Panthers fan, I would probably be somewhat worried about this because usually Aleksander Barkov, he's the team captain and he brings a lot of leadership to the Florida Panthers group. He's done it all. He leads the Panthers in career franchise. If we're talking specifically about in the Florida Panthers franchise, I think he leads them in goals, assists, and points. So he's done it all with the Florida Panthers. Back-to-back Stanley Cup champion for a reason, and and he also helps out on the Panthers penalty kill. He's a key face-off contributor. He helps out on the power play in special teams in general. So losing him is devastating for that Panthers franchise. It could be devastating for any team, but of course he's on the Florida Panthers, and so losing him is most likely going to hurt. And then you got Matthew Tkachuk, who's usually the engine, the spark plug, if you will. He's always chippy, likes to drop the mitts. He's kind of the enforcer on the team, if you will. And losing an enforcer like that, that's definitely going to hurt. But hey, you got Brad Marchand on the team, so I guess that's the secondary enforcer on the team with Brad Marchand, because Brad Marchand always likes to mix it up with some of the other NHL players. Kind of likes to get in the scraps as well. Like Matthew Tkachuk, he's nicknamed the Rat for a reason. But yeah, I will be worried at least just a little bit if you're a Florida Panthers fans, because these are the two of the best forwards in the league, two of the top forwards on the Florida Panthers, in both skill and talent. But again, they still have depth, so it's not all too bad. But yeah, I will be worried just a little bit, and I really don't see them three-peating at this point. Mostly because I don't think they could pull off a three-peat, and especially with these injuries like that, I don't see no three-peat for the Florida Panthers. They're not going to pull off a New York Islanders 1980s Cup run, if you will. Because the Islanders, I think, went on to win four straight Stanley Cups in the 1980s. So, but I'm not counting the Panthers out fully. They're still going to be a playoff team nonetheless, but going to repeat or going for the three-peat, I don't see that happening. They're still going to be a playoff team, but I don't see them three-peat. They could even still reach the Stanley Cup Finals, but a three-peat, definitely not happening. All right, now we're going to talk about Anthony Stolarz as he signs a 4-year contract deal with the Toronto Maple Leafs on Sunday. The extension will kick off at the start of the 2026-27 NHL season. He's currently on his 2-year contract deal that he signed with the Toronto Maple Leafs, I think in somewhere in 2024. He signed with the Toronto Maple Leafs for that 2-year deal. So after that deal ends, which will be after the season, his new contract will kick in with the Toronto Maple Leafs. And taking a look at his stats from last season, he had a 21-8-3 record with a 2.14 goals against average and a .926 save percentage and 4 shutouts. These are not bad numbers. These are really great, solid numbers for Anthony Stolarz. And his .926 save percentage ranked among some of the league leaders if we're talking specifically about goalies, because that is the topic. And yeah, these are not bad numbers. And in the playoffs, he had a 4-2 record with a 2.43 goals against average and a .894 save percentage in 8 games. So a decent record in the playoffs, not lights out per se. But yeah, just decent solid stats. Could have been a little bit better though if you didn't face the Florida Panthers in the second round, because I already knew the Panthers were going to win that series. You put Toronto up against Florida. Florida already has more offensive depth and talent than Toronto. And of course, Toronto chokes in the playoffs every year. So yeah, if you put them up against Florida, you're definitely not winning. Yeah. He did have a concussion in the playoffs, though. I think that was in one of the games against Florida. So he underwent knee surgery and also missed some playoff time for the Maple Leafs due to that concussion. So This will probably raise questions about his long-term durability, especially with him signing that 4-year extension, and at least open up their 2025-26 regular season against their arch rivals, their Atlantic Division rivals and longtime rivals, the Montreal Canadiens. Moving on to another contract signing. So Cam Fowler, he signs a 3-year, $18.3 million contract deal with the St. Louis Blues. This new deal will kick off at the start of the 2026-27 NHL season. He would have been an unrestricted free agent after the season if no contract extension was signed. And Cam Fowler, he was acquired mid-season from the St. Louis Blues, and Anaheim Ducks traded him over to the St. Louis Blues. And in those 51 games with the Blues after the trade, he had 36 points, 9 goals, 27 assists for 36 points in 51 games. And in the playoffs, he had 10 points in 7 games in a single series, setting a franchise record for most points in one round by a defenseman. And this contract signing also allowed the Blues to spread out some cap space and manage their roster before the regular season starts. And Cam Fowler, he's played with the Ducks for 15 seasons before going over to St. Louis Blues for that trade. Anaheim retained 38.5% of Cam Fowler's remaining contract in the trade, alleviating some of the immediate cap burden for St. Louis. And taking a look at his stats with the Anaheim Ducks, he had 457 points in 991 games played in 15 seasons with the Ducks, 96 goals, 361 assists for 457 points in 991 games played with the Ducks, 493 points in 1,042 games played with the Ducks and Blues in his career, 105 goals, 388 assists for 493 points in 1,042 games played with the Ducks and Blues. And he played his 1,000th career NHL game in the 2025 NHL Winter Classic last season against my Chicago Blackhawks, which is P.S. terrible Winter Classic for my Chicago Blackhawks. But yeah, I think he's the first player in NHL history to play his 1,000th NHL game in a Winter Classic or any other outdoor event, whether that's Winter Classic, Stadium Series, Heritage Classic. He's the first NHL player, I believe, to play his 1,000th career game in an outdoor game, in a Winter Classic outdoor type of game. So, yeah, that's actually a good fun fact to know. So, really glad I brought that up. But, yeah, I think he's expected to be a top 2 defenseman for the St. Louis Blues, so he'll certainly be bringing in a lot of veteran presence and to help the Blues go or get back into the Stanley Cup playoffs. Moving on from that contract signing, so Kaapo Kakko, he's expected to miss 6 weeks for the Seattle Kraken because of a broken hand. He suffered a broken hand during a preseason game against the Edmonton Oilers, and the injury was caused when Oilers prospect Bill Ackley had slashed him in the hand. So just slashed him in the hand, and now he's out with a hand injury. He exited that game and did not return. He probably might return around early to mid-November, depending on the the healing, like if he feels like he's better to play or he feels like he's great to play. Depending on that, he'll return around that time. He signed a 3-year contract deal with the Seattle Kraken in July of 2025, and I think that contract was a $13.575 million contract deal with an AAV of $4.525 million. He joined the Kraken in the trade with the Rangers in December 2024, and he made his Kraken debut against my Chicago Blackhawks. I saw that up and close, and I felt like he had a solid, great game with the Blackhawks. Again, I was there at the United Center for his debut with the Kraken. He had a solid, great game overall. He didn't put up any point, though, I believe. I don't think he put up any point with Seattle in his debut. But overall, just a solid, great debut for Kaapo Kakko nonetheless. Take a look at his stats from last season with the Rangers and Kraken. He had a career high 44 points in 79 games played, 14 goals, 30 assists for 44 points in 79 games played. And with Seattle alone, he had 30 points in 49 games, 10 goals, 20 assists for 30 points in 49 games. He's expected to be a top 6 forward for the Kraken and contribute offensively, including on the power play. So he's going to be helping out with special teams during his time in Seattle. But yeah, his absence is an absolute blow to the Kraken's offensive depth because going back to my point, he's expected to be a top 6 forward and to be a tremendous impact for the Seattle Kraken. And the Kraken going into the season already dealing with other injuries such as Jared McCann out with a lower body injury, Chandler Stevenson out with undisclosed injuries. So I don't know about this. I don't know if the Kraken are still going to be a playoff team. They missed the playoffs last season. I think they might miss the playoffs again this season, but we'll just have to see how everything will go. But taking a look at the NHL preseason games on the slate for today, there's only 6 preseason games on the slate, starting with the Carolina Hurricanes taking on the Florida Panthers at 5 o'clock p.m. Central Time, followed by the Battle of New York between the New York Rangers and the New York Islanders at 6 o'clock p.m. Central Time. That game will air on NHL Network for you guys to watch. And then there will be the Philadelphia Flyers taking on the Boston Bruins at 6 o'clock p.m. Central Time, followed by the Pittsburgh Penguins taking on Detroit Red Wings at 6 o'clock p.m. Central Time. And then we got the Calgary Flames taking on the Seattle Kraken at 9 o'clock p.m. Central Time. That game will be on NHL Network for you guys to watch. And then we got the Battle of California between the San Jose Sharks and the Anaheim Ducks at 9 o'clock p.m. Central Time. But that's going to do it for this episode of the Hockey Talk with TG podcast. Thank you guys for tuning in as always. I know I went a little bit over than I usually do on the Hockey Talk with TG podcast, but if you listen to this podcast regularly, you will know that some episodes I tend to go over 30 minutes depending on what I have to say. So this episode is one of those episodes that I went a little bit over 30 minutes. So we will try and keep it under 30 minutes for most of these episodes. That's just going to be a thing on the Hockey Talk TG podcast where I tend to go over 30 minutes and the each episode I do, or at least my podcast is usually 30 minutes long, but again, I tend to go over, but we will try to keep it under 30 minutes on the Hockey Talk TG podcast. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe if you are watching the podcast on YouTube. And if you're listening on audio platforms, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, or anything like that, make sure to follow the Hockey Talk with TG podcast on there. Smash the subscribe button, hit that notification bell, follow the Hockey Talk with TG podcast on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, or any other podcast streaming platform. We are with you guys every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 11:30 a.m. to noon Central Time, 12:30 p.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern Time. So make sure to follow this podcast so you don't miss any episode of the Hockey Talk TG podcast. You will get all the latest hockey news, teams, players, stats, and other in-depth analysis on the Hockey Talk TG podcast, especially with the regular season coming up next Tuesday. This is your go-to and number one podcast for all things hockey, so make sure to hit that subscribe button and hit that notification bell, if you will. Make sure that you're following on all podcast streaming platforms. Both of you guys have a great rest of your day. Keep God first as always. Be blessed. I'll see you guys on Wednesday for another episode of the Hockey Talk with TG podcast. Take care.